My name is Josh Shrego. Welcome to the Infocom edition of AV Smackdown. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a consultant in the industry over in the Bay Area working for TCOM. And of course, with me today to discuss the industry topics and what's going on and make sure that you're fully informed are Mark Coxon and Chris Netto from Barco. Mark, how you doing?
Doing well. Doing well.
Good. Glad to hear it. Chris?
Doing good. Thank you for coming on our Must-See TV program.
Well, thank you for having me to be the moderator and mediator between the two of you today. So, one of the biggest things going on in the industry right now is this big change in emphasis towards experience. Now, experience can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So one of the things that I want to ask, specifically as manufacturers at a show like this, how do you create an experience that draws in customers and partners and end users to show them and showcase what you guys are capable of providing?
I guess I'll start. You know, I think we were seeing this trend towards experience, and number one, I'll say first and foremost, I think I was one of the first people to jump on and say, hey, I really like this. I know some people in the industry think maybe it's vague to focus on experience, but I think the focus on experience for a show like this really means that we take our booths and we quit creating showcases of products on shelves and start doing more real-world environments. And when we start to create real-world environments using technology in our booth, and maybe even that's partnering with other folks to make sure that we have the whole ecosystem present, then we can have an experience that an end user comes to, and just experiences. And then for the people that are a little more technical, we have a way to walk them kind of behind the scenes and show them the guts of how all these things are working. And then if we couple that with education and whisper suites and stuff like that, we can really get down to the design engineer, sales engineer people that are looking to learn how to develop those experiences and what went into, I guess, developing it in the first place. So I think it really just goes more from, you know, our booth shouldn't look like Best Buy. You know, we had this on AV and the AM. I said, you know, the more we focus, or the more our booths look like a place where you buy products, the more people are going to treat us like a product to be bought, right? Yeah. And that's, you know, that's really where we as AV people have to focus on making sure that people understand there's a lot more than the box.
Sure. So, Chris, what about you? What's the experience? Where does this come in? Is that more important than trying to demonstrate the quality of the equipment that you have?
No. All right. So we're at a trade show. Let's be very clear here. Because we're at a trade show, you want to attract people to your booth, right? So in order to do that, you need a wow factor. Plain and simple. You need something that's grand. You need something that's big. You need to have that eye-catching thing, whatever that thing may be. It's to draw you in. So you have to stop thinking like a manufacturer, start thinking like a retailer. And I'm talking about a retailer shop. It's not bad to be a Best Buy, because what you want is you want that sales circular. You want something that's drawing people coming in. And that's, you know, I'm using the sales circular as an example, but you want people to walk through the booth, whether it's walking up to a massive, you know, LCD wall or an LED wall or a big projection or something that's going to stop the average user. Because everybody is walking around, everybody's seeing different things. You want something that's eye-catching. So I'm a big fan of, you need to have that like, oh snap moment right there. As soon as you see it, like, oh, I gotta go find out more about it. So when you're talking about experience, that's the first thing. The second thing is that you still have box integrators. And what I mean by that is guys that are collecting boxes, putting them on the shelves, want to sell it, need to know the price. So yes, product is still important, but you're right. Showing in that real world case, whether it's putting it outside in a digital signage environment or bringing it into a different thing, but it's crucial that you bring in the right content and the right content or experience people to do that. You're right. On the shelf is not going to work, but you need a wow.
So I want to draw that line in the sand right now, because we keep bringing it back to, we want to have this wow factor, we want to show them what's behind the scenes, we want to be able to do this whole thing and give them that full, complete experience. And we hit back on that word again. So as we're looking at this new agenda and this new push from the AVIXA environment, define experience in the AV community. What is that experience that you're trying to create? Is this, because we all know people who do such grand things as theme parks.
Yeah.
We also know people who do such small things as huddle rooms. Mm-hmm. And there's a massive differentiation between the two as what you would define as an experience.
Go ahead, Mark, put your finger on that one, because that's a moving target.
I wanted you to define it. Define what an experience should be.
Well, I think the experience should be what you expect the end result for the person that comes into the space expects. So I'll give you an example. So I was working with a pharmaceutical company. He said, I just want to know what happens. What do I see when I come in the room? He didn't want a demo of product. He didn't want an explanation of, and in fact, he told me, don't use the word technology or custom when you explain this to me. What do I see when I come in the room? And all he wants to see is I come in the room, I see this screen, maybe I plug in this button, I push. That's what he wants to see. To him, that's the experience. The experience is that. The experience isn't wow. The experience isn't 18 feet of video. The experience is that I can come in and intuitively touch something and have my meeting start when I want my meeting to start. Then you have the other side of experience, which is what Chris is saying. Wow, I kind of see these as two separate things, but they're not. That doesn't mean that they're not both experience. You have to think about what the person that's walking into the space, what are they trying to accomplish and why are they there? Mm-hmm. And then if you can make technology facilitate that in an easy way, then you've created an experience.
I mean, we're manufacturers, man. We have to understand what the problem is. For us to provide an experience, we got to do some homework, and it's homework on our part as a manufacturer to go out there and discover what the pain points are and work backwards. Me and Mark have had conversations regarding design think. What is nice about design think is that you start on the back end, on the customer end user, true end user side, not tech managers, but the people that the tech manager are actually working for. You hear their stories and you just go backwards. Where it becomes a little tricky, and when it's introduced into our AV integration world, is when you start with the ideation and with the prototyping, because that we're always working as former integrators. We're always working to get to that end goal. To us, experience for many years was getting it done on time with 0 defects and on budget. That's not experience. So if there's any integrator listening to this, if you think that's experience,
execution.
Dude, that's your contract.
That's execution.
Yeah.
That's why you get paid.
Yeah. So,
but that's not the experience.
Exactly. The experience comes from that oh wow factor that you're going to get, or the simple fact that there is not a reaction, that it just works, and it works the way that the person down the line wants it. That's what I think is in question.
So let's talk about that person down the line. The trend in this industry at this show for the last several years has been a dramatic increase in end users. Mm-hmm. Last year it was 40% were tech managers that came to this show.
Yep.
And that's staggering considering the number of people that we have here. That was almost 20,000 people.
Yep. So
with that being the case, how, from their perspective, can the AV integrators, can the AV manufacturers begin to present these experiences? What is there a defining moment of, I'm going to come in and say, well, here's the back end experience and that's going to make your life easy. Here's the front end experience as to how you're going to treat this. Where do you start with those guys?
Well, I was that guy. So I was that person on site for 13 years, designing and working with end users. And I was the client or the customer to many of the companies that are here, perusing what's going on in technology. But I was the end user, but at the same time, I had to report back to the people that I worked for. You're not going to get a defining moment. It's not going to be at this show. Defining moment, we're going to look back in 5 years and go, that was the show that happened. Because God knows, man, we've been trying to talk about, and I'll just give you another example of a buzzword, convergence and AVIT. Come and gone, right? But we're still dealing with products that are still making that conversion today. So what was the turning point? Give me about 5 years, man, and let's see where that is. This first one is a good experiment as far as where experience is, but we're all still working our way through it. I mean, as a show, as a community, we're trying to figure this out. But as manufacturers move along, to show that immersive, to show that end result, it's going to require us to really change even the mentality of how booths are designed. They got to be changed for the better. The little stands are going to have a hard time adjusting to immersion. So it's going to be changed.
That brings up a big point for you. Yeah. Is that going to be harder for the litter guys to play?
It does become harder. It depends on the vertical. So I think, when we had someone come through yesterday from a major architect, and you're talking about end users at the show, I think there is a major shift in what that strategy is when you're trying to speak to an end user in a booth versus speak to an integrator. Many integrators have been kind of raised on this line card philosophy. These are my dealers, these are the products, this is the way those products work, and if I continue to create templates to use these same products over and over, I can create an efficient workflow where I have a modicum of success over the time with the client, but it doesn't actually serve the end client in creating new solutions or innovative solutions over time as well as it should. So the show is creating demand side. It's demand side push. End users at the show, they're coming and they're saying, this is what we want. So as manufacturers, we have to start to listen to, well, this is what we want in the space, right? And not what the dealers want to sell us, but this is what we want to buy.
It's not somebody in an ivory tower throwing out products anymore. Those days are done, dude.
Well,
I'm just telling you that.
So let's talk about the products for a second. You mentioned specifically AV over IP. Probably 700 of the 1,000 manufacturers here are presenting an AV over IP solution based on just signage alone. At what point in creating this experience are you able to push the line past? How do you get to that experience while still pushing the envelope, while still trying something new? We know HD-based T can create the experiences that we want to do. At what point, where's that balancing point between the edge and when you need to stay with tried and true? And at the same time, how are we able to hold the manufacturers accountable for maintaining stability and making sure that we don't have to constantly be doing those service calls?
The people that are going to hold our feet to the fire are the creative content creators, the creatives that are out there that are sitting at home right now thinking that something doesn't exist to fulfill their dream. Their end vision of what something's going to look like. And they're working on it on their, they're scratching it up on a piece of paper or on a computer, whatever they want. And they reach the point where they're wondering if the technology even exists to do what they want, right? That's the people that we have to constantly be thinking are home, stretching the boundaries, pushing the envelope of what is out there, right? We very much think in an audio video control world, there are so many other components to experience that go beyond that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, I'm a slightly different viewpoint on that. And I think how we have to push that envelope is we have to start to listen, because at some point they might not want to buy what you think is tried and true. We had this, if you look at music, people bought CDs. You might have wanted to sell CDs and CD players and super audio CD players and whatever. And at some point, the end user said, I don't want to buy CDs anymore.
Yeah.
So we can go out and say, hey, I want to sell this box because I like this box and I think this box has good results. And I sell this matrix switch and I sell encoders and decoders or receivers and transceivers or whatever I say. And at some point, the end user says, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm not buying that. Yeah. And I'm not talking to guys who sell that. I'm talking to people who offer this. Yeah. And they may not care that it's not all the way there yet, because they don't want that anymore. I don't want to manage all this infrastructure. I don't want a $20,000 matrix switch sitting in a closet. I've had them for years. I got 20 in the back room that I don't use anymore that have VGA ports and 5-wire and everything else on it. It's an investment that hasn't held true for me. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to use something that I know is going to be around in 20 years and something that I've used for 20 years, which is the switch that I have in my closet. Yeah. And that's what I want to use. And I'm not talking to anybody who's not offering that to me. And at some point, a few people start to do that, and then the others, it flips. That's the tipping point. So you have to be very aware of what conversations are, when people come through, what are the conversations they're having? What kind of sentiment are you hearing behind? We had this guy yesterday we were talking to, and he's very much stuck in an environment that is in these boxes, but his sentiment is, as soon as somebody shows me how to get out of that, I'm escaping. Yeah. I do not want to do this anymore. I'm not paying $400. He bought new laptops and had to pay $400 a room for firmware updates times 45 rooms just to get the laptop inputs to not switch over because of the output on the laptop was flipping the video upside down. Spent $16,000 to get his laptops not to flip upside down out of somewhere because the equipment was doing something weird. So as soon as you can show people, if people are showing them how to get out of that, that's going to tip all of a sudden. And if we're not paying attention, all of a sudden we're not the guys offering the solution.
Josh, I'm going to throw this at you because product roadmaps are no longer controlled by manufacturers. If you're a manufacturer and you think that a product's roadmap, the 5-year plan is controlled by you, you're out of your mind. Because it's the end users that are doing that. You plan out 5 years, there is a blip in that 5 years. Something comes up that just makes it one button press or makes it that much easier. There is no need for the product that you've been thinking about is going to work.
Well, so that brings up an interesting point. If we can't make those 5-year plans, and we're dealing with larger entities because the smaller entities either getting consumed or can't compete, how do you remain agile in this environment? What's the agility factor from the manufacturer's perspective? What is the agility factor? How do you continue to shift?
It's not an easy question. It's lean operation, and it's the ability to steer a ship hard right. If you're not If you're not prepared to make big changes like that, you're going to be, having a tough time. Dude, it comes down to agility, I think.
It's hustle, and I think as we start to do more of software-defined ecosystems and less of a hardware-defined ecosystem, we have the ability to become more agile because we're not tied to a board and a circuit and an input and an output. Mm-hmm. We can look at that product roadmap, we can anticipate needs, but then we have to be able to make sure that when we're doing our firmware revs or when we're doing our feature adds, a lot of times we develop a product and we already know that product is going to evolve over time. We get a minimum product to market that does X, Y, and Z. We know it needs to do more, mm-hmm. and we know that on that roadmap are those feature sets. But we need to be able to reevaluate over time instead of putting these guys in a closet, just driving forward on something that somebody did 5 years ago, and making sure that that feedback is continually coming, and then those feature sets can either get dropped, moved, or pushed forward. And we've had to do that with firmware. Mm-hmm. We've had to do that with all sorts of things where a client says they need something now. We thought it was going to be important in 2 years. It's important today.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that becomes part of the next development. So you have to have an agile.
So what should integrators tell people, their customers, their partners, their manufacturers, on either side of this coin? We have this one standpoint of, this is what my client has built for the last 2 years. They have spent X number of dollars doing so. How do we make that story compelling to shift them? So now that they have 2 support models, now they have to shift. How can you make that argument to these people?
Well, for me, a great book is there's a book about marketing, and he said the most important phrase they ever use is, the world has changed. And that was a great solution. We made good decisions based on the way that the world worked. The world has changed, things are working differently. This is actually a much more efficient way for you to do what you have. And then you find some type of way to bridge, perhaps maybe an overlay for monitoring or service or support or any of those things so that you can see both of those systems, but then you start to slowly transition out. Just because you have an investment, we call this sunk costs, right? That's the hardest thing people have in life, is dealing with sunk costs. You have a pair of shoes in your closet that you bought 10 years ago that you paid $150 for, that you will not throw away, that you hate, because they're worth $150. You know how much they're worth to you? 0, because you never wear them, but you will not throw them out. And that's what we have to deal with, the true psychology.
No, but that's making the argument that they don't use the room. So let's.
It's not that they don't use the room. What I'm saying is you can't predicate what you buy today as the best solution.
He's talking about product life cycles.
Based on what you bought last time as the best solution, just because last time we bought this, so we have to buy that again, even though there's better stuff out there.
Well, again, but that's still asking a customer to support 2 different ways of supporting their solutions. So how do you make that argument? How do you present that to somebody?
How does an IT manager, manage when he's got a whole bunch of laptops that have VGA ports and they have Windows 7, and then he has the new laptops have USB-C video out and no headphone jack or whatever it is.
Yeah, man.
You have to do it. The market is giving you this product. You have to find a way to do it. I'm just going to go buy old laptops online from China.
Yeah.
From the recycle program, because I don't want to deal with the fact that the new ones have VGA and USB-C, and that's what I'm used to managing.
We understand that, man.
You have to move it.
You're seeing people with laptops with VGA connections asking for 4K. Come on, but they're stuck in their product in their life cycle of refreshment of their equipment. That's where we're at. So, you know what? We can only provide we are enablers to the solution. So we can provide something that enables that solution until we find that perfect solution, and that's the golden carrot, dude, or the unicorn, is that we're trying to one day, as a manufacturer, we're providing a way to get to that solution. It happens to be the solution. That's the best we can do for now, but we're trying.
As an integration company, to me this seems like a great problem as an integration company, because people see them as people that sell them products. And if people see them as people that sell them products, then they're always going to be out to bid, whatever. If you are the person, you say, you know what? You're going to be going through a transition from this to this. And that's why you need me. The reason you need me is because this is hard. Yeah. This is a hard thing to do. And you need a partner that you can have at your disposal that helps you move from here to here, so that you're not just buying stuff and one room works one way and one room works this way and that tech only knows that room and this tech only knows this room and nobody's getting support and none of my stuff works. That's why you need an integrator.
Everybody needs
That's why you need a transition plan. That's why you need a consultant. That's why you need somebody who's looking at your business and saying, this is where you're at, but guess what? The world is going this way, and that's where you're going to end up in 5 years. Yeah. How do we get you there in the way that's the least painful? And that's my job. Yeah. That's what I do for a living. I help you do that as a business.
Dude, be the digital Virgil, dude. Just get you through those steps.
Yeah.
So you talked about the way that it's the IT managers that have to figure out how to support those laptops. It's the IT managers that have to figure out how to do that. We all know that the shift is moving from facilities to IT in where our space is located and who we're talking to anymore. But a lot of these IT managers can simply go to a soft codec company and say, okay, we have to have a video conferencing solution. I have to have Skype, Zoom, Blue Jeans, take your pick. There's probably 20 of them out there right now. I know that my company alone has gone through about 2 or 3 of them trying to find the right solution for us just in the last 2 years. How, when you can start talking to those companies and some of those manufacturers that are on the show floor right now that handle all of these experiences, that handle all of these single format way of communicating. I don't have to walk into a room anymore and plug in an HDMI. I can start a meeting in Wireless Present. How can we argue that a complex meeting room with a custom programmed user interface is justifiable against, well, I just want to go in and have a Skype meeting room?
Well, you don't argue it.
No.
You look at an application. This is what we were talking about with this design thing, and people saying, well, you know, we have people that are always trying to value engineer us, or we have people always putting us a bid, or saying, you're trying to just rip me off and sell me stuff that I don't really need for this room. But if you start with customer empathy and you're not thinking about products, you're not thinking about the dealers that you have to meet gold with next year.
Yeah.
And you sit down and you say, what are we trying to do in this room? We work from A to B to C to D. Then we work with the customer and say, we ideate and we figure out, hey, this is how we're going to get to that point. And these are the minimum things that we need to do the things you need to do in the room. Then when you come back with that solution and say, hey, these are the things that we picked based on what you and I actually designed together. It's a lot harder to get that project or that specification thrown out of the room when the customer helped develop it based on what they needed. Yeah. And we don't spend the time to get there. And I understand sometimes we don't have access to those people. I get that. But that's a problem to be solved. That's not an excuse to not do it. What we need to do is, if we're telling this story, if we're telling, like I said, if we're telling this, we're going to help you manage this transition to the C level. And the way that we're going to do that is we need to talk to these people. And we're going to develop something that works based in your company, based on your workflow with the skill sets that your people have. Then when you go back and you've done that, the stakeholders are at the table. They understand why there are table mics instead of just one microphone on a USB camera at the front of the room. Because you've gone through all those things. And so I really think it just takes more involvement. And we can't just say, well, I don't get access to that person. I just have to deal with the IT manager. Okay, well, quit taking jobs where you just deal with the IT manager, because IT manager's treating you as a commodity. Don't take that job anymore. Say, I'm sorry, it's not a great fit for me, because the way that I really want to deliver something that's going to be of value to you, and if we don't have access to the people, if we don't work together to develop that, I'm just going to sell you a bunch of stuff that doesn't work the way you want.
Yeah. What he said.
Well, I will never doubt the fact that I'll just keep this day in mind as a day I was able to keep Neto to that short of an answer. All right, so let's bring this back around to the experience factor, because as we scale and as we move things forward, we're looking at an environment where the experience needs to remain the same for users as they go forward. Now in our discussion today, we've already created an environment where I'm using analog technology potentially, or older technology. I'm using new technology. My experience is going to change, keeping that unified. That's the target. We want to make that user experience the same. So, the selling point. What is the selling point for us? How do we push that forward? How do we move that line to say, well, we understand that you just spent all of this money? Because we are still asking our customers for patience effectively in an instantaneous response world.
I know.
So how do you push that line? How do you ask that question of your customers to say, I understand that you're not going to have exactly the same thing. How do you play that game with them?
This conversation is going to go down the road of good enough, man, and I don't want to go. I don't want this conversation to be good enough.
Well, here, let me put up the tee, and here's the good enough ball. Take a swing.
Hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Hate it with a passion. It's one of the phrases that I absolutely hate because it's such a good enough in AV to me is such a cop-out excuse. It's such a give up. You gave up. This is the best I can do, right? We as an industry are an industry of, we should be an industry of creative thinkers, of tinkerers, of makers, of dreamers, and that sort of stuff. We're not seeing that. That's where you get good enough. Ante up. It's time. You know, if you got some, design salt, show it. Make it happen. You got an idea? Push it. You know, if you don't do it, somebody, man, just look anywhere. Google anything. There are kids creating stuff out of 3D printer access at their schools, bypassing stuff that we're seeing here. You got to up your game, man.
I won't tell your engineers you said that. So
for
how
me,
do you push that line?
So for me, I think there's two different parts of that. I think good enough is a symptom of
byproduct.
It's a byproduct, but what it's a byproduct of is, a sad fact that we have a hard time realizing sometimes or facing up to in the industry is that we haven't always delivered the value proposition that we said we were going to deliver. If we delivered the value that the customer thought they were going to get when they bought the $20,000 system, they wouldn't say, oh, well, this one's just good enough. The reason they're saying it's good enough is because that one cost a lot and still didn't do exactly what it was supposed to. Yeah. So I'm going to spend less and get just good enough. Why spend all that extra money to not get 100%? And so as an industry, I think we need to find ways to do that. I'll say the other thing that I say when you're talking about managing this, I think this is where the soft ecosystem really comes into play. There's a company called Invinsys or Wonderware. These guys make mashup software that goes over like the top of factory overlays. So you may have a machine that runs your construction line. You may have another machine that runs your security system. Invinsys takes this, mashes those things up and creates a software overlay that goes over the top of those things. So you don't know that you're blending analog, digital, whatever. You're creating a dashboard for the business that's overlaying all these legacy devices. And I think there's a great opportunity in AV for people that are out there saying, hey, look, this is all the stuff that's out there. So we can create this overlay, almost like a .NET type thing Microsoft was trying to do with software. And now we control this map of this. We can do gradual changes to the interface as we need to, but generally now I'm not doing a hard push from here to here to here to here each time. Yeah. And I think there's a great opportunity for folks out in the market that want to do that.
Yeah, and that's the creativity part of it, man. It's like those shows on Food Network or whatever where they drop 3 ingredients into you and tell you to make something out of it. You know what? Do that to your teams.
Chopped for AV.
Yeah, exactly. Do a chopped for AV, man. Put that stuff in front of them and tell them to go wild. And that's what you're getting. You get an old VGA connection, you get an HDMI connection, you got something else there that's like a mystery thing. Go ahead. What can you do with this?
You've been joining us here at AV Smackdown with Mark Coxon and Chris Netto, and myself, Josh Shrego, as the guest moderator and mediator between these two. In this first episode, we've had a lot of interesting conversations about trying to create that novel experience, and we're leading ourselves right into the AV as a service. So tune into episode 2 from InfoComm 2018, where in AV Smackdown, we're going to start attacking AV as a service.